Okay, well, welcome to our Journey Towards Justice kind of event on listening. We are going to start with our land acknowledgement, and Norma is going to kind of lead that for us right now. So you can, if you want to speak up, you can, or else.
I'll speak up. That is that we're grateful for being here in this world space, but needing to remember and acknowledge that this land belongs to Native and Indigenous peoples, the Dakota tribe, and people were here, and that through a series of unfortunate events of genocide and violence and deceit and distrust perpetrated by our own government, they lost this land and were forced off. So they were good stewards. They continue to be good stewards in their land. We have a lot of work to do, I think, to learn from them and practice that stewardship.
Okay, thank you, Norma. I'm going to introduce Amanda Vetsch. I'll let you say your title because it's a little confusing. But she is here to kind of lead us. She is from Riverside Innovation Hub, which we are in partnership with, and also has some good takes on how we listen, both in terms of our everyday life, but also in terms of as we walk into these spaces with racial, social justice, those kind of things. I think it's things we can all kind of take and use in our lives. So again, thank you for being with us tonight. And I will turn it over to Amanda. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So I'll give an overview of what we're going to do together tonight, and then we'll do some introductions. We'll do introductions. Then we'll talk about why we listen, how we listen, and what next. For our introductions, we are going to all get to share. I invite you to share your name, your pronouns, and something that brought you joy recently. I'm going to have you start because you have the mic.
Yes. Okay, I just go around. Okay. So I didn't listen very well. My name, my pronouns, and
Oh, sorry.
what brought me joy recently.
Yes, it's the next slide, I think. Yes.
Oh, so the name is Kurt Ella, and on Monday night, I did a one-to-one over at Creations, which is a food shelf that we work at just a little farther over here. I talked to a wonderful woman named Stephanie, and it was such a joy just to listen to her speak and to find out about her life and to find out how she sees joy throughout the world. Just that experience of talking to us brought joy to my life. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Perkavold. I am, for those that have met yet, I'm the new family investigator. I use she, they pronouns, and something that brought me joy recently was just everyone has been meeting the last week since they started, and especially the kids, the students.
My name is Lee Hallstrom in EM. Something that's brought me joy is one of the congregations, to invite the congregations to hear from each other with Lenten devotionals. And during Lent, to do that, we need about 40 to 44 devotions. And on Sunday, I was thinking, oh no, I don't know if this is going to work. And it's just amazing. We'll need 18 more. So that is a yay God, and if any of you would like to do it, I would like to make it a 0 more.
My name is Cindy Bessie. My pronouns are she, brought me joy. I have a new grenade and smiling. I love her. Sue Wilson, pronouns she, her. And my joy today was having lunch with a friend of mine. And I just see them.
My name is Kathy Gallup, she, her, and I joined the Fridays, I am able to FaceTime with them. Hasn't been able to use the form for years, before, you know, advances with technology in the last couple of years. I had to rely on my brothers to maybe call me when they were busy, or maybe. So now I get to call them.
I'm Amanda, and I'm gonna come back to myself.
Hi, I'm Daryl Williams, him. I think my most recent joy is just being here tonight and talking with people because we spend a lot of time sitting in our house and doing each other.
You again? I'm Norma Williams, she, her. I think my most recent joy was that beautiful film last night. It was still there this morning. I don't care how old this film was. I'm Cynthia Dickinson, she, her, and Cindy stole one of my ideas, which is I have an 8-week-old grandbaby, and she's just on the beach. But also I've been really loving walking around outside, spending time outside, even in the cold, and appreciating the real beauty of winter, which I think even as Minnesotans we get jaded about or we complain about it. I just have tried to be more grateful for the world and all its beauty in all seasons. I find it makes me happy.
I'm Lisa Bass, and producer Sheeper. And I think the thing that it brought me most joy is yesterday our daughter Jessica let us know that she and her partner were approved for a nice grant from the County Building in Oregon to continue with their organic farm. So it's very, very pleased with that.
I am Rob Bass, him, joy. Repeat the sound. A lot of things bring me joy. I think one of the things that I guess I could talk about was last night we were watching Netflix and the Fab Five, and there was a gentleman who was working with homeless people in Austin, Texas, and just watching the passion that this individual has for that, and how all of that interaction between all 5 of these gentlemen and this one person, and watching his boundaries. He put up all these walls because of a lot of guilt, blame, and sign himself, and these boundaries just started melting away. Just like interacting with people.
Yeah, that worked.
Pretty cool.
I don't know.
Okay, Nick, do you want to introduce yourself while you're muted?
Yeah, to turn off Mickey Mouse in the background. Hi, everybody. I'm Nick, he, him, and let's see, something that brought me joy recently was volunteering with Courage Center last week, teaching some adaptive snow sports. It was great to get back out on the hill after a year off due to the pandemic.
Okay, I'm John, he, him, his, and Joy, a 4-year-old daughter that is in your business all the time and hilarious as can be. That's the joy going on in my life. So
I'm John Nelson, he, him, and the most recent joy is getting most of this technology working today.
Amazing, thank you. I'll do a little bit more about me. I have to write it down, or I'll just talk about it. I'm Amanda. I use she, her pronouns. Something that brought me joy recently. This last week, I've been dog sitting for my parents while they're out of town, and it's a foster dog, and he is simultaneously delightful and a not nice nerd as well. So that's been fun, and I'm overjoyed to be done. Back to my home with my very nappy cat. Like John said, I get to work at Riverside Innovation Hub as the congregational coordinator and facilitator. I also have a master's of arts and theology from Luther Seminary with a concentration in justice and reconciliation. And then specifically, I focused on what does it mean to be a church called to anti-racism in this place. And yeah, all of those things are delightful. I continue to get to learn alongside congregations as we wrestle with these questions together. And one of my biggest learnings is that to be a good neighbor requires being a good listener. And then a little bit about the Riverside Innovation Hub. There's a picture. Do we need to go backwards and introduce Felicia?
Yeah. Felicia, do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Yes, hello. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. This is Felicia Schmidt, she, her. Is there something else I should add?
What brought you joy recently?
Actually, we've got a distance learning kindergartner at home right now. And although it's been challenging, it has actually brought me a lot of joy watching her learn and witness the brain changes, and watching her absorb all of it has actually been quite wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. Oh, so Riverside Innovation Hub is a learning community that's convened by Physicians and Center for Location in Oxford. Currently, the learning community is made up of 12 local congregations, including Diamond Lutheran. We gather around a commitment to become a public church, and we do that by practicing the public church framework, which is the picture up there in tiny, tiny font. There are 4 arrows in a circle. The top yellow one with number 1 is accompaniment. That's the first movement into the neighborhood to hear the neighbor's story for the sake of the neighbor. The next one in green is labeled number 2, interpretation. And that's a movement back into the church to hear and understand God's story. And then 3 in blue on the bottom is discernment, discerning what God has called us to do and how God has called us to be in light of our neighbor's story and God's story. 4 in pink is proclamation, and that's proclaiming back into the neighborhood the good news that displaces the bad news. That's a crash course on what we do together in the Riverside Innovation Hub. That's enough for today, and I can come back later if you want to learn more. Any questions? Amazing. Great. Let's talk about, I think that's the next slide, why we listen. Is that video?
Yeah.
I've got this so long to make it.
So we are gonna do a short video, and this is kind of what brought this video kind of came to us, I think, from Sue, and got the team thinking about this. How do we listen in terms of our this journey toward justice? So it's a short 4-minute video, 5 minutes.
So listening is not the act of hearing the words spoken. It is the art of understanding the meaning behind those words. You know, when people say you're not listening to me and we simply parrot back the words that they were said, congratulations, your ears work. You know, that is the act of listening. But the art of listening is creating an environment in which the other person feels heard. Now you notice what I said there, the other person, and I used an emotional word, feels, right? I don't want to know that you heard the words. I want to feel heard, and feel seen. I want to feel understood. And that is a learnable, practicable skill. So it's, there are many parts of it. It's things like replacing judgment with curiosity, right? That's a hard thing to do. We're a pretty judgy group, right? To be curious why someone has a point of view. It's creating a safe space for someone to, as my friend Dia Khan calls it, empty the bucket. So even if we find what they're saying just reprehensible, right? You're never going to be able to actually have dialogue until at least one of the parties gets the opportunity to say everything without judgment. And as she calls it, emptying the bucket. And once somebody feels like they've completely said everything, then they're more apt to listen to you. But usually what we do is we defend, or we litigate, or we interrupt. We point out flaws in logic, which is just frustrating. And when you point out some flaws in somebody's logic, because we're all imperfect when we speak, and we all choose the wrong words at various times. And that's not what I meant. You know what I meant, is what we have to say. Well, what if you know what you meant? Then why don't you say what you can see how this spirals. But it's things like when somebody says something, and there's really easy ways to do it. Things like, go on, tell me more. What else? And they keep talking. And you go quiet, they feel the space. And tell me more. Go on. And eventually, it's all out. And then there's a safe space for you to respond and express yourself in a constructive way. But that's correct. We do not teach listening, and listening is the way to create to build trust with someone. You make someone feel heard, they'll trust you. It is the way to find common ground in opposition, in simple cases in business, but in more complicated cases in national politics, or in global politics, or in war. Why do William Ury, who wrote Getting to Yes, he talks about the same thing. He goes, we have talk shows, but we don't have listen shows. He says we have peace talks, but what we really need is peace listens. And he, who's been at the table at the highest levels of peace negotiations, he said people show up and start demanding what they want, and that's how the negotiations begin. Nobody starts by saying, so tell me why you came here. There's a great documentary that I recommend to learn this. It's called White Right, Meeting the Enemy by Dia Khan. In a nutshell, Dia is a Muslim woman living in the UK who was trolled by white supremacists to the point where the police got involved because her life was at risk. They told her stay away from open windows. That's how bad it got. The way Dia responded was by moving to the United States and going to meet the white supremacists. And she brought her cameras. I mean, you can see it all happen in this documentary. And basically, she gave them a safe space to feel heard. Now, that sounds mad. Like, why should she give them a safe space to feel heard? They should give her a safe space. Yeah, fine, good. It's never going to happen. Dia sits down with these white supremacists, and she gives them a safe space to feel heard. It's extreme listening. And I say it's extreme because, they hate her, They don't just disagree with her. They want her off the planet. And she lets them empty their bucket, as she calls it. And then conversation begins. And because they feel heard, they start to trust her. And as they start to trust her, she becomes a friend. And then it creates this paradox where I'm supposed to hate this woman, but I trust her and consider her a friend. And what you see is one by one, these white supremacists, these diehard white supremacists, start dropping out of the movement because they can no longer reconcile their beliefs with reality. And if it can happen in this extreme environment, then it can happen anywhere. And all that is required for us to cross political divides or disagreements at work and things like that is one of the parties has to learn how to listen. It doesn't even require both parties to learn the skill. That's the amazing thing. And it is one of the most remarkable skills that anyone can learn, the power of listening, yeah. So the documentary is a great extreme example of what it can do.
Amazing, thank you. And now a question for the group. From both that video and.
Sorry. We're getting there. There we go.
So both from that video and your own lived experiences, why do you listen? We're gonna have, let's go popcorn style. So you can just raise your hand so we bring a mic to you and then say it. Does that make sense? Do we understand the question? Why do you listen? Or why do you want to be good listeners?
We want to connect.
All very neat to know what's going on.
To connect, to better understand, to know what's going on, yeah. Gather information, to gather information. Relationships. Our relationships, our impact, deepen relationships. You're doing a great job, John. Yeah. Any other reasons we want to be good listeners?
To know someone else,
To know someone else? I'll repeat it if we didn't catch it. Yeah.
to know someone else.
Yeah. And I think we heard it in the video, but listening has the power to mutually transform, especially if we go in with the commitment to listen and to be heard. And theologically, so in terms of God, we listen because we believe that God is, we are each made in the image of God, and so to listen to another is to listen to God. That's a good reason. What else? Oh, to continue to expand how we understand the world around us. We each have what we see and what we hear and what we experience, and then we get to listen to someone else how they see and hear and experience, and help us to kind of widen our gaze. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Just like it's on the video, to make sure others feel they've been heard.
Those are all the reasons why we listen. It's tiny font by to connect.
Sorry.
To connect, to understand, to gather information.
To know what's going on. I can jump in here. Form relationships, deepen relationships. John is doing great. To know someone else, power to mutually transform. We are made in the image of God, and to make others feel heard.
Perfect. Now we'll jump to the next one. How do we listen? I would argue that we have everything we need to be good listeners. We don't need to buy anything or like learn a new skill. But like a lot of things, it requires intentionality and it requires practice. So we are going to practice listening. Oh, we did our friends online.
We did. I missed it. We have to know how we can help or fit in. And because you don't have to say anything. Thank you, Nick and Felicia.
So we're going to practice listening by doing a practice called reflective listening. So we'll have people join into partners, so groups of two. The first person will respond to the prompt, the other will listen, and then the person who is listening will share back to the person who shared with them what they heard. Does that make sense? Okay. We'll do that twice with two different prompts, and then the person, so person A will get to share, person B will get to listen and reflect, and then person B will get to share, person A will listen and reflect. That's prompt one, and then again for prompt two. We have about, did I say 10 minutes for each one? I bet I wrote it down. Yes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes for each one. I will tell you when we hit about 5 minutes, so when you should switch. The first prompt, you'll be invited to share a story about a time you felt heard. And then I'll go over this again, but the second prompt is share a story about a time when you didn't feel heard. If you want the minute by minute breakdown, it should be about 3 minutes to share your story, 2 minutes to reflect back, switch, 3 to share, 2 to reflect. If you need the minute by minute breakdown. Otherwise, just feel it out. Does that make sense? Yes, are we good to go?
Feel free to spread out in here, and it doesn't have to be the person next to you, so you don't have to do this with your spouse, although you can.
Yes, you're welcome to do it with the person you're with, or
And
feel free to move about, we've got time.
yeah,
Great.
so go.
We have it.
Schmitzel, do you want to be in the breakout room?
Okay, Kurt. You guys want to go together?
No.
Is to listen to their story. And in that story, we receive the pain. They've given, yeah. So yeah, listening is essential.
Yeah, I think for my own journey, I think the thing that I've had to do is pay attention to the power dynamics, just that there's a power dynamic just sometimes by my white body being in a room. And in the importance of not always being the one who has the answers, which I like to be, not always being the one to have to speak or share a story, but to really acknowledge, okay, there's something at play here that is outside of myself. And so there is a concentration sometimes in those conversations that has to be taken, because that's not our go-to. That's not my default. You know, my default is to interject and go in. But I'm also not, I don't think it was until we did, some of us in this room, and I think Amanda did the Next Move workshop with Joe Davis and Dave Shear, it really struck me in that conversation of the power dynamics and what I bring that I don't even know that I bring to a room.
Sharing earlier, I feel like I've been blessed that you start doing these one-on-ones. I had African American co-workers throughout my life, and a lot of them because where I placed myself. Conversations have basically been work or net. Conversation more after that. Another two, one of the ones with African Americans who I consider more acquaintances. We just we're working on social justice causes together. One which didn't go into race at all, had more to do with community activism. The other one went into race, and she took it there. And what I was just sharing, and I feel blessed that I was able to listen. I was a much better listener than I did in the past. But the hard one for me with this particular conversation, I noticed once, I was noticing myself when I was trying to be poor listener, because this was the first time I sat with an African American discussing race. And now I realize I'm thinking, what should I say? What shouldn't I say? And that is interjecting into trying to listen to what she's saying. And so I was trying really hard to listen to what she's saying while also thinking, okay, where should I not go with this? Where could I go with this? So it's a whole different dynamic. But I'm grateful and blessed that I'm now able to do this.
Thank you, Mama.
Yep, we had a couple comments here. Nick said, I heard something this week during the MLK breakfast that justice can't happen without truth. And then Felicia said, goes back to making a connection, forming a relationship, a meaningful, no agenda relationship.
I think what you're saying, Kurt, is important. I think we just always have to remember that we're gonna make mistakes, and you can't just set yourself back. Don't know what to say, so you gotta say the right wrong thing. That ever listening. So we just have to like. It's hard to do, I know. I understand this. We are going to
I'm going to throw it back to you here, Amanda, but with Riverside Innovation Hub, the thing that has really kind of struck me is the one in this step of accompaniment is really listening just to listen. There's no agenda, there's no data collecting. It's this genuineness of how do we refocus in our lives? And this is what I think, for me, Riverside Innovation Hub is all about, is how do we focus in our lives just to be there, be present, sit in that with people, whether it's joy, whether it's brokenness. And we can't do that if we have an agenda. So I don't know if you want to talk more about that step of accompaniment and at least how you guys in your research have gone forward with some of this.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I continue to learn how to show up and listen for the neighbor, in a way that honors the neighbor, and that's hard. It's hard to decenter ourselves. And even like, it's not gonna be like 100% I'm decentered, I'm only listening to them. Things are going great, I'm doing this perfectly. Like, oh, some thoughts are trickling in and I'm getting distracted. And I'm gonna come back to the way I want to do this conversation. And it's beautiful, and I'm fully convinced that's how God is calling us to be in community together. And that's really contrary to how we've learned to show up in community. Often it's what can I achieve? What can I get done? How do I convince this person to like me? How do I get what I need from them? Or many other ways being in a relationship, but it's hard to kind of relearn or take that layer out and just be together, be in a way that's intentional, and both kind of on an individual level, and then as a team, and then as a congregation, and then as a neighborhood. Takes work, and it's delightful to do it all together, and to fail and learn together. That's my least favorite part. Did I get at what you were
Yeah.
Did I go there? Great. Any other thoughts about how did I word this question?
Oh, sorry.
How we relate this to racial justice during the justice? Yes. Further?
No, one thing to talk about is the uncomfortableness in talking with someone. And for a lot of us, because of that uncomfortableness, we feel like perhaps people are uncomfortable. We don't even go there, and that we do that. So that's.
I think I kind of relate to what Kirk was saying. Excuse me.
Well, you know,
I think it kind of relates to what Kirk is saying, that because you think you'll say the wrong thing, or you're always wondering, you know, what can I say that won't sound patronizing or won't sound insincere or you know, you're just always kind of going outside your comfort zone. And that's a barrier.
And that's where I think sometimes our grace for ourselves needs to come into play. I remember there was a speaker at the gathering youth gathering in Houston who went through a lot of situations and kept saying, there's grace for that. And I think we have to remind ourselves over and over again, there's grace for that. Even when we fall short, we say the wrong thing, all of those things. And I agree, that's probably the hardest part that gets in the way because we don't want to mess up.
And that's a gift of doing it together. That maybe you're not quite ready to lean into this comfort, but maybe someone else in your community is. Or maybe you can kind of get braver by watching them do it. That's great. I would be so hopeless if I had to try and figure out how to be in this world without the community. Any other thoughts related to this question? Anything online? Okay, so then what's next? Here is a pretty picture with 3 categories of kind of next steps. So there's a low-hanging fruit, a moonshot, and a coffee. The low-hanging fruit would be what's something you want to commit to doing that's a low-hanging fruit. So fairly possible, fairly within the realm of what's comfortable, maybe just like a little added step to something you might already be doing. What's a moonshot, something you want to aspire to commit to? And then coffee, who is something you would want to connect with in ideally over coffee, but if you can kind of expand that as you will. Does that make sense? If you don't drink coffee, you can do tea or maybe other beverages. Diet Coke, bubbly water, I love bubbly water. Or over phone, or on walks. Does that make sense? What I know, what those three categories are. Let me give you some examples. For me, a low-hanging fruit would be, sometimes I'm in power with my siblings, I have a brother and a sister, we're all close names, and they are more external processors than I am. And sometimes I pretend I'm hopping out of the car instead of engaging in conversation. So a low-hanging fruit for me would be to ask a follow-up question when I don't feel like listening to my siblings' stories. And then a moonshot, well, I just wrote engage in a conversation with a stranger. So maybe something a little bit more detailed than that, but like not immediately running away when someone wants to talk. And then coffee. I have a friend who is just in her first year of seminary in North Carolina. So I would like to call her up and see how she's doing. Those are examples. Does that make sense? So take 1 minute to think to yourself 3 things you're going to commit to: a low-hanging fruit, a moonshot, and a coffee. And then after that minute is up, turn to a person near to you and share what you're committing to. Good. I will tell you when the minute is up, and it'll probably be a minute and a half. Because I'm fast. Ready? Think quietly to yourselves. Go. Wonderful. Now turn to someone near to you and share what you are. That was a full minute.
Felicia, where are you?
She's at work.
This is my office.
I built that office.
No, somebody literally went around our office and took pictures so people could use it as a background.
It is your real office, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
My office is out here on the street. Get to work.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your time tonight. Thanks for sharing those meetings of listeners. It's a joy to spend time with you all in person. It's fun to see you as we have. And that's all I have for us tonight. So we can keep chatting, or you can go home and bundle up.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for being with us.
Thank you, Amanda. Nice to see you.
And if you are curious more about Riverside Innovation Hub, you can ask Amanda tonight. Also, on our team would be myself, Kirk, Sue, Felicia, Melanie Wrights, and then Isaac and Andrea Morava from Central Esperanza are on that team with us as well. So we are slowly kind of learning stuff and getting information to you. It's a 2-year partnership, and we hope to keep you in the loop as much as we can, and then teach this and move forward as a congregation. The other thing, so we are starting a book study for Dialogues on Race. Rob, do you want to hold up a book over there? This is starting next week. There will be an online session on Tuesday nights at 7 and 6:30. And Wednesday nights, it'll be in person at 6:30 as well.
I read it.
There is a sign-up sheet here tonight. You can sign up online as well. Daryl and Sue are going to be leading the online one on Tuesday nights, and then Kirk and Norma will be leading on Wednesdays. But it's a really good book, and if you know anyone else in the congregation that you can invite to this as well, that would be great.
And stick with it like one night, or can you say, well, this week I really would rather do the online.
We hadn't talked about that, but I don't see why we couldn't jump back and forth. I would say it's an option.
The discussion you're looking at this one,
There isn't any reason not to, because we're covering the same material.
yeah, I understand.